Welcome to the Valmika Property Investing Podcast. I'm JP, your host and the founder of Valmika Buyers Agency. With my background in investment banking, I'm here to share Wall Street tips and secrets for building a top 4% property portfolio. Let's dive into the world of property investment together. Welcome to another episode. This week, we're going to explore a special request from one of our listeners, and that is on the future of co-living investments. It's a investment type of strategy that is really gaining quite a bit of momentum due to, number one, the demand for co-living from residents, and also the investment returns that it gives. So let's get straight into it. I'm going to speak about a few different subheaders under this topic. And first of all, I'm going to describe why there's this rise of co-living, especially in Australian cities. Then I'm going to move into the benefits of co-living from a resident perspective. And then I'm going to speak about the investment opportunity that it brings. And lastly, we'll discuss the future of co-living. So let's get started. So why the rise of co-living around the world and in Australian cities? So what are co-living spaces, first of all? So they are characterized by shared living areas and individual bedrooms within a property. And this is gaining significant traction in urban centers, especially like Sydney and Melbourne, for example. And what is actually fueling this demand? And there are a few factors that are fueling it. Number one, and the most obvious one, is soaring housing costs. So rising property prices in major cities like Sydney and Melbourne make traditional apartments and houses especially, increasingly expensive. So co-living offers a more affordable option for young professionals, students, and others seeking a vibrant city life. Secondly, there's this desire for connection. So co-living fosters a sense of community and belonging, and particularly appealing to those new to a city. It provides opportunities for social interaction and shared experiences. Then lastly, one of the other major factors that I'm seeing is the demand for flexibility. So many young people today prioritize flexibility in their living arrangements. So co-living often offers short-term leases or co-living memberships, catering to those with transient lifestyles. Okay, so let's move into what are the benefits of co-living from residents. So you as an investor need to understand what your product provides. And what your product is to provide is you need to understand what are the benefits for residents. What are they actually seeking? Number one, and the most obvious one, is affordability. So sharing living spaces significantly reduces the housing costs compared to traditional apartments. And this is including the rent. So if you're able to share the rent of an existing asset among multiple people within that property, it's very beneficial to those wanting that lower cost element. Secondly is the convenience. So they usually come with furnished apartments, utilities, and potentially housekeeping services, which simplify everyday life. If you're sharing the costs amongst many people within or multiple people within that accommodation property, then you are able to afford someone to come in and actually keep it clean. So it makes sense to share those costs amongst others and improve your quality of life. Thirdly is the community aspect of it. So co-living fosters social connections and a sense of belonging, especially for newcomers to a city. And lastly is the flexibility. So short-term leases or co-living memberships provide flexibility for those with transient lifestyles, as already mentioned. Right, now that we understand what the product is, let's discuss co-living as an investment opportunity. So co-living for property investors presents a potentially lucrative alternative asset class. So how does this become available? Sorry. Number one is through stable occupancy rates. So the growing demand for co-living suggests the potential for consistent occupancy rates. So if your asset has got multiple tenants under the same roof, if there are periods when one of the bedrooms that you're letting out, for example, is vacant, you got the other three. If there's a 4-bedroom house, you got the other 3 to carry you through until you get that vacancy filled. So it's a form of a risk mitigant when it comes to vacancies. Secondly, and the most obvious one, is the higher rental yields. So when you are leasing out a property to one tenant, you're not able to get as much if you leasing it out to multiple tenants. So on a cost per rent basis, when you spread multiple, even though the overall net rental yield's higher, when it's spread out over multiple tenants, you can market it at a higher overall rental yield, but on an individual basis, it's much cheaper than renting out a single apartment or house to a tenant. That makes sense, right? Then thirdly is the investment options that it brings. So you can, as an investor, participate in co-living development projects or invest in REITs. Those are real estate investment trusts that are focused on co-living properties. Just keep in mind, if you go the REITs route, it is like owning shares in a stock. Therefore, you can't really partake in the leverage benefits that you get when you own an asset outright. So there'll be a little bit of sacrifice when it comes to gearing and investments, but it may be something that'll attract you. Considerations for co-living investors. So the idea is great. The returns look wonderful, but there are a few factors that are very important to consider when investing in these properties. Firstly, the most obvious one is location. Co-living properties don't make sense in many regional areas. However, they make sense in high demand areas that target demographics such as inner city suburbs, close to universities, or business districts. The people who want that product want that convenience, and they want to be in areas that are traditionally too expensive to live in or demand that community feeling when it comes to universities, for example. So those are the locations where this type of product offering would work best. Secondly is the management. When you have multiple tenants within an asset, it's a different type of management strategy and a different type of management skill set that you need. I encourage people to use robust property management plans and property managers when it comes to investing in these type of assets, because there are many legal aspects that need to be considered, especially when you are managing it. And this is definitely worthwhile to outsource to a management company that is experienced in this if you are not yourself. And that leads me into the legal and regulatory landscape. So local regulations and zoning restrictions pertaining to co-living can vary across municipalities. So make sure to understand these. And if you don't, just go and hire a professional that can lead you through it so that you don't make the mistakes that can be very costly down the line. Okay, the last subheading under this topic is the future of co-living. There are a couple of potential trends that I'm seeing when it comes to the co-living space. And number one is the tech integration in this space. You're finding that there are seamless operations and tenant communication facilitated by apps. And this can be used for stuff like rent payments, maintenance requests, and community events. So making it a lot more streamlined, tech, and it's relatively cheap to do it nowadays, is get apps that actually run this process for you smoothly. And a lot of the property managers in the space will have that available. An important consideration in this investment is the sustainability focus of it. What do I mean by this? So this is eco-friendly design principles that are likely to gain traction, that are gaining traction now, in fact, and more so in the future. And this will attract environmentally conscious residents, which more and more residents are becoming environmentally conscious because it is the generation that you are targeting that targets this type of demand. And lastly is the demographic expansion. Co-living could extend to new demographics, and I'll give you an example. So this might attract seniors or families in the future with tailored services like on-site childcare or senior care. This makes sense, right? I hope this podcast was insightful and beneficial to you. As in my previous episodes, I always encourage people to send me an email if there is a topic that you would like me to discuss. My email is info@valmikaproperty.com, or alternatively, please leave me a message underneath this podcast. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Valmika Property Investing Podcast. If you're interested in our services, please visit us at valmikaproperty.com. Remember, the content shared in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. For personalized financial advice, always consult your trusted financial advisor or professional. See you in the next episode.